You penned an article last week about the military operations, and you discussed the significance of India coming back to the tariff negotiating table, agreeing to stop buying Russian oil, using its navy to actually shut down shadow fleet oil from Iran and Venezuela. China heavily reliant on that Iranian oil. So how does all of this now play into the current state of things?
Look, all of these individual operations have their own significance, their own importance, and their own meaning, but all roads lead to China. This administration is absolutely committed to dealing with the number one geopolitical threat we face, the one that periodically threatens to nuke Los Angeles, the one that periodically saber rattles in the direction of Taiwan, the one that could potentially actually get us into a global conflict. And that's what we saw with the Indian operation that was so extraordinary this week. India has always pretended to be non-aligned. They're leaders and founders of the non-aligned movement. But the truth of the matter is they've always been semi-aligned with Russia. And in the process, especially during the Ukraine war, they have been buying just an extraordinary amount of Russia's sanctioned oil exports. That oil absolutely pays for the Ukraine invasion. So to see what happened in the last few weeks is extraordinary. And here's what it was. On February 2nd, after all kinds of back and forth and all kinds of face saving, India and the United States signed a trade deal that is shockingly impressive. 18% tariffs on Indian goods coming into the United States, 0% tariffs on American goods going into India. This just flips the script. This is an extraordinary thing. India has always been extremely protectionist. Okay, so that's good news. That's good news for actually both sides because it levels the playing field in a way that will actually ultimately be good for both sides. It actually lowers the trade barriers for both sides. But that's not the story. 4 days later, just 4 days later, India goes from buying extraordinary amounts of Russian oil to actually seizing Russian oil tankers in the Indian Ocean. Those tankers are part of the shadow fleet that makes it possible for Iran to sell 90% of its oil exports to China, Russia to sell 40% of its oil exports to China. And before the Venezuela operation, same scenario there, not just for China, but also for Cuba. So this is a geopolitical earthquake that almost everybody missed except NTD and the Rod Martin report because nobody has been reporting on this. India has flipped after 80 years in a geopolitical struggle in a way that forces China to pay full market price for oil that it's been getting for about a third of market price. That constitutes one of its biggest unfair trade advantages. It's completely outside of international law, and it just stopped. It stopped cold. And taking the Iranian regime's production offline and putting it in the hands of what we hope to be a democratic Iranian system is going to be a tremendous hole in bricks in China's alliance system and in its ability to project power.